It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. You're tuned to your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso, right here on SABC3. Now, this morning, we are putting the spotlight on our immune systems and getting a better understanding of how the Echinacea plant can assist in getting ahead of those nasty colds and flus. Now, back with us, Dr. David Naude, where we focus on the myths we tell about colds and flus, and we need to unpack them. But before we delve into that, we need to start at the very beginning. Now, I chatted to Dr. Andy Suter, head of the medical department and product development for Echinaforce, all the way in Switzerland, to find out.
It all starts with a virus. Somewhere there's this very small particle of a virus that you have in the majority on your hand, and then you touch yourself, because we touch all the time our faces. You come to your nose, for example, and then the infection starts. You know, the virus nests in your mucous membrane here, and then it starts to replicate. And afterwards, you have then the whole inflammatory response. This is the response from your immune system to get rid of the virus. So all the symptoms you have, like sneezing and what have you, that's the answer from your immune system. You are doing this, not the virus itself. And then what the virus does, you know, if this is the virus, you have on the cells a receptor, and the virus attaches this to the receptor, and like this, it enters the cell, and it uses the cell like a copy machine for itself, and out come new viruses. Now, what these viruses are doing, they are infecting again cells and cells and again. It's like a chain reaction. Now, what Echinaforce can do, it really can block this connection here to the receptor, and therefore the virus cannot block here, you know, and it is swimming around, and then it gets destroyed.
We share exactly the same viruses in South Africa and in Switzerland. People are traveling, people are flying long-haul flights, and they share their viruses worldwide. So there is no difference regarding the bugs that produce the colds and flu. On the other side, we have exactly the same problems, I guess, in South Africa. You have too much stress, your nutrition might be better, and you're certainly not having enough sleep. So in principle, we're facing exactly the same problem. It is also important to know that we have carried out our clinical studies internationally. It's not just that we are testing our products in the Swiss people. We are doing international clinical trials. And this is important to show that Echinaforce is working worldwide in the same way.
Very interesting indeed, Dr. David. Thank you very much. Welcome back once again. So there we have it. So we gain a little bit of understanding as to how exactly Echinaforce acts within the body and helps to kind of repel those viruses that enters our mucous membranes. But let's talk about this, busting some myths, colds versus flus. What's the real difference here? Is there a real difference actually?
Well, look, they're both caused by viruses, but different viruses. And I think a lot of time when people say, I had the flu, they probably just had a cold, or what we call a head cold.
It's more heavy hitting to say I've got the flu.
Exactly. Particularly when you need a day off work. But,
exactly.
But the thing is, there are some shared symptoms. So runny nose, sore throat, congestion, bit of cough. But typically flu or influenza is characterized by fever, chills, body aches and pains, that hypersensitive skin that people get as well. That's more suggestive of an influenza, a true influenza infection, which lasts longer and the symptoms are more intense.
Yeah, and I mean, if you really take a look at it, I mean, if you've gone out there and we all experienced the colds and the flu, you know, at some stage in our lives, and there's a big difference, you know, especially when you say when the sensitivity of the skin and the backache, the back pain starting as well. Now, here's a question. Do we all suffer from the same kind of stresses and symptoms all around the world? Is the virus kind of the same thing with regards to colds and flus?
Yeah, I think generally you can say it is. I think we all experience similar symptoms, you know, particularly with an influenza, the aches and pains and the fever, congestion, respiratory tract inflammation. But there are some exceptions. For example, an asthmatic child. If an asthmatic child gets a cold, typically their asthma flares up, so they get wheezy, tight-chested, and they're more vulnerable to getting a lower respiratory tract infection. Okay. So in your more vulnerable groups, there are some exceptions, but generally the symptoms are common throughout.
Besides for men, though, right? It's a little bit worse for men.
Absolutely.
The man flu. Listen, one more quick one. We're trying to bust some myths here, and this is maybe an argument that I think not only I have with my wife, but I think, you know, parents, they have amongst each other. Things like running in the rain, can it make you sick?
Well, that's obviously a hotly contested topic in your house. I certainly don't run in the rain. Not because I'm afraid of getting sick, but
Yeah.
I just think it's crazy. But, no, seriously, there isn't any evidence that suggests running in the rain would make you get sick. But you do find in winter that flu is more common, and the reason for that is the influenza virus is more stable in a colder temperature.
Right.
And the little droplets of virus in the air are more stable in a dry environment than in a humid environment. I think also in winter we close windows, we sit indoors, we're closer to each other, not enough fresh air, so I mean your risk of infection is particularly higher.
Okay, so there's definitely a couple of reasons why we get sick more often during the colder winter months as opposed to summer. And with regards to some of those myths, I mean, running in winter or not wearing socks, I mean, it takes an actual virus or something to infect you. It's not the temperature or the fact that you're getting wet.
Yeah, absolutely. There has to be an exposure, and that would happen whether you're in the wet or not.
Yeah, and does it come down to maybe also, let's say you take something like running in the rain or cold feet, a weaker immune system that would get you more prone to be sick?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, athletes especially endurance athletes, their immune systems are more challenged because their systems are more stressed. So they are slightly more vulnerable than the average person.
Yeah.
So yes, they could pick something up, but it's not because of being in the rain or in the wet. It's just they are at a vulnerable point.
All right, well, there we go. Mythbuster. Thank you very much, Dr. David. We're going to be back with Dr. David in just a little bit more on colds and flus a little bit later on. And we're also going to be revealing the results from that breakthrough study that we've been teasing you about.
Vogel's Echinaforce is the world's strongest herbal product that's clinically proven to prevent and treat colds, flu, and their complications.